Hello, I'm William Gallagher and this is 58 Keys, always a series about how writers like you and me can get more out of Macs and iPhones and iPads. This time we're going to ask just one, and hopefully answer, just one question. Should scriptwriters buy Final Draft? Yes, I'm going to go with yes. If you want to write scripts, you need to buy Final Draft. I'm saying it from practical purposes. I'd love to be able to say that Final Draft is such a great app that it's worth it and you must buy it. It's really close to that. There are a couple of little things to tell you about it, but other than that, the real reason for buying it is still that if you are a professional scriptwriter, particularly in film, then Final Draft does what you need and it will fit in with whatever production company you're working with. That's definitely true for film. It's really, really hot on film. It's close to almost totally true on television, certainly US television. There is an obscure BBC television drama script format. Dates back to the 1950s, studio camera days. It's utterly unreadable, horrible, horrendous throwback. And for some reason, there are certain BBC shows that still use it, and who knows why. Final Draft is not great for that. I think you can get by on it, it'll struggle, but if that's what you've got to deal with, yeah, Final Draft isn't your worry. Everything else though, film and television, that kind of very familiar film layout, Final Draft is excellent for. If you're a radio writer, and I accept that radio playwriting, as I do, is practically a UK anomaly in the world, radio drama is amazing, but not everywhere does it anymore, then frankly it's a wild west. The script format is anything you like. I've been a judge on the Writers Guild of Great Britain, Radio Awards, Theatre Awards, and in both cases, theatre and radio, I can't remember the last time I saw two scripts that were exactly the same. By the time radio gets to production, it tends to be the same, but on the way, it's anything. With theatre, it is always anything. Final Draft has a template for what it calls a Broadway theatre thing. So maybe a US theatre thing will be different, but I don't know yet. Any Broadway theatres watching, I'm willing to try it out for you. Film, no, television, all the stuff. The things that we read the most of, Final Draft is utterly superb for. Utterly superb. Oh, it's so close. So close. I really like it, and yet I quite understand why there are alternatives to Final Draft. In fact, I'll tell you what, we will do a whole episode on alternatives to Final Draft. There are reasons to use them. There are very good alternatives, but for practical purposes, let's look at Final Draft now. Even if you know it very well, actually, there's one thing in particular I have reason to believe you don't know. And if you're on the fence, if you're a die-hard Word user wondering why you should switch to this just because your studio has told you to, oh, well, I can show you that right now. In fact, let's do that. Here's Final Draft on the Mac. And this is the heart of what makes Final Draft good. And William's office, day. Whoops, excuse me, I hit caps lock there. Right, now let's just stop for 1 second. This doesn't actually look like a lot. It's a very familiar script layout that you've read 100 times at least. And there doesn't need to be anything much to it, unless you are that die-hard Word user and you have schlepped through doing this 100 times. Because look what we've actually got so far. If I just look over here, I know I said I just caught my caps lock thing on, but that was just finger trouble. I didn't actually need it to write this bit. I didn't need to read it on any of this line. It's Final Draft knew that was a scene heading. Scene headings go in caps. Scene headings have that little dash, all this stuff. And also, what comes after a scene heading? A great number of times, it's description, like this. Not always, but often enough that when you hit return after writing a scene heading, you hit return there, Final Draft switches to the margins and the style and the mixed case for descriptions. Word will do that, but you have to set it up. You have to tell it the styles for it, the different margins, the caps, the no caps. You have to remember the right keystroke for it here. And you will do that. It's fine. It's just there's lots of them. Here you hit return, you're writing the description. And what comes most often after description? I've no idea actually. Is it 50-50? More description? Final Draft doesn't know. So it carries on as description until you tell it otherwise. But look at how I told it otherwise. Here was my cursor down there. Actually, let me do this. Cursor was down there and I hit tab. That's all I needed to go into doing centered characters. Let me put that out of the way. This here is a character name. It's all caps. It's centered. Dialogue. What comes after a character name? Nearly always, every single time, close-ish, it's dialogue. The character, what they're going to say. Of course, it's dialogue. So Final Draft defaults to switching you to dialogue format. This is not centered. This is what throws a lot of word users, I think. This section here is not centered. It's actually indented. It's a proper wrapped paragraph, but the margins have been squeezed into the side. So as a whole, the block of dialogue is centered, but each individual line is not. Fine, you do that, it's all great, and honestly, I like that enough as it is, but then I also like this. Let's see what happens if I just go next. Because I've hit return, it figures that's the end of the speech, and I can go on to the next character. Let's say, well, hello, welcome to my script, you're in this, and you say hello. That's nice. Okay, again, I didn't have to do much. Tab, write your name, hit return, write the dialogue. Now watch this. We are having a conversation, aren't we, in this script? So cursor's here, just move this, there's the cursor. If I hit the tab key now, I think we're now used to auto-completion on phones and things. And because of that, we know the fact that if I don't want William to be the next person speaking, I can just type some other name. But in an exchange of dialogue like this, decent chance William is the next person. There I am. So without even thinking, I can do that. And of course, watch what happens next. It knows that exchange is going on. Okay, now that's fine. That's great. Actually, I utterly love that. When you've got two characters that are in the middle of an argument, you've got the steam and the fight and the passion, and you're mashing at it. So you're not writing this stuff. The characters are in your head. They're fighting, and you're just trying to write it down quickly. You get it down. You're writing it down. You don't have to stop to think, oh, I must reset this word style to indented margins left and right. I must caps lock for the cap. You just write the words that they do and you get them out there. And I think the rhythm and the pace, any one single bit of this saves you no time at all. It's a pixel of a second that you save in not having to tab across, hit the right thing for it. But that pixel of a second is crucial to your flow of writing. You really can just fly through a script with Final Draft doing this. And similarly, there are things like that's dialogue in an exchange. Well, now it's a nice day. Let's go outside. See what's happening here. And off we pop. Next time though, let's say, well, actually, I've just said there's a gag that it's colder out there than I thought, because I looked out the window as I said it to you, and I can actually see a little bit of snow. Feels warm in here. We go out, you and I, we go, yeah, cup of tea inside. Do you fancy a cup of tea? Yeah. You go to the office, I'll bring the cup of tea. Let's go in. So, interior. And now look what's happened. It's got the complete list of all my scenes so far. Now, again, that's for speed, that's useful, but also accuracy. So I don't suddenly call it Bill's office on page 29 and have the poor location scout searching through trying to work out what I've done. Final Draft is utterly superb at keeping you consistent, keeping you fast, letting you concentrate on, it's not the writing, it's all the writing, but on the bits that don't exist yet, the bits in your head that you've got to get out on paper. That's what Final Draft is utterly excellent at. So is that worth $250 or about £195 to you? I'm going to go yes. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. I'm not saying it's a casual purchase, but for what it gives you, that thing, yes, definitely worth it. If it's a contractual equipment requirement that you've got to write in Final Draft, well then, is it tax deductible? I don't know. That feature alone, all of that, the actual writing stuff is definitely worth the money to me, and I believe to you as well. There is an awful lot more to do with Final Draft though, and I don't care. We're on version 11 now, and it keeps adding different things. There are ways to organise your script, although actually I prefer the way it used to do that. There are ways to do character reports, see how many times William talks compared to you. All sorts of ways of analysing your script, which is all very interesting. You can have Final Draft read out the script to you, assign computerised voices to things. If you want to perform with Siri, you can do that. I think what remains great about Final Draft is this business of being able to fly through things on your Mac or on your iPad. So let me have a look at this. I need to save that script first somewhere. What did I just call it? My Great Script or something like that. All right, well, I have a TX folder in Dropbox. I'll put it in there. So here we are on the iPad. If I tap on there, open this up. And let's go to browse. Okay, and there it is. And as you can see, it's practically the same thing. Isn't it? It is the same thing. So well, there you go, William's office. We're all dieting, whatever. So fine, more than fine, that's really handy. My iPad is with me wherever I go. I can do this stuff, it's right there, everything I want. You see the notes down the bottom, I can swap to a scene heading, a character description. All those things are fine, and I keep saying fine because I'm kind of used to them. When you first do it, I think they're brilliant, but there are problems. I'm going to carry this one on the iPad just so you see. I'm not sure it's going to cause a problem, but actually the iPad one crashed on me earlier because it does. That is one of the annoyances. I mentioned earlier that there's this business of Final Draft knowing what you're going to type next, and I said what comes after a character name is almost nearly completely dialogue. Of course it is. But then, of course, there are the Rileys, aren't they? If I tap up here, hit return and hit tab, that kind of states direction. We can do that kind of thing. And if we were doing multiple paragraphs, we can keep doing things like this. And actually, I'm quite pleased that worked, because one of the times that it goes wrong on me, both on the Mac and on the iPad, is when I've written text like that and I've decided to go back in and add the Rileys for it. For some reason, at some points, it just gets confused, and it's like the number of times when I've just thought, okay, I've gone up to the character a bit above, hit return, because it's been easier. There's something funny about Final Draft in that it's not very smooth, I think, is the issue. Part of the problem with the smoothness and this is that in a lot of ways, even though we're on Final Draft version 11 now, and actually I think 12 must be coming quite soon, it doesn't feel like a modern app. It feels like quite an old one. And I believe that part of the reason that is that Final Draft is written to work identically on Windows and Mac. And I presume it doesn't do everything that Windows can do, but I know it doesn't feel like a new modern Mac thing. Actually, let me show you on this. If we go back to the Mac version of this, this appears to be fixed, but when Final Draft 11 first came out, if we look down the bottom of the screen, that's where a window used to open for me with it. It was like the app was not aware that a Mac can have a dock underneath it. It was like it wasn't a good Mac citizen, and every now and again there's just the odd thing like that. It helps that it's just a little bit old-fashioned in how clunky some of it is. For example, I mentioned that there was something I thought you probably didn't know, even if you're a Final Draft user, and it's a fair bet because you cannot believe the number of scripts I've read from $200 and $300 million movies that have made exactly the same mistake. In fact, this is what they look like. I'm just going to make a PDF version of this. Right, that's what I see on an astounding number of scripts. This is page 1 of something you're trying to deliver to somebody, and in my mind, I've really screwed up already. I mean, it's so common, clearly people don't care, but I notice it, and as soon as I see it, I know it was written in Final Draft. Do you want people thinking about what software you use, or do you just want them to think about the script? Do you want them to get into the story, or do you want them to be thinking that you're so slapdash you didn't bother with the title of it? This is why it happens, though. Let's go back to Final Draft. Here we are in Final Draft. There's the script as you've been seeing it, and this is page 1. If I try to scroll up further, there's nowhere else to go. This is the top of the document. This is page 1, except it isn't page 1 of the script at all. The title page is the first physical page of the document. You might number from this onwards, but there's a page that goes before it, and you have to know that it's up here. Under Document, Title Page. It's not like that's hard, but it's obviously tripping up a lot of people, because seriously, I read about a script a day just because I enjoy it, but the number of times this comes up, clearly some of the finest writers we have are tripping up over this, and after 11 versions of it, I would be looking at doing something about that. So there are these little annoyances. There's the odd crash. There's enough to make you a bit grumbly about it, just enough to stop you being a devotee, an evangelist for Final Draft. I'm close, but I hesitate. I couldn't say to you it is utterly brilliant without telling you about the rest. They bother me enough, and I know you would find them, so I've got to tell you about them. Nonetheless, it's so good that I do recommend it, but it's not quite good enough that there aren't many alternatives. I think the thing is that the annoyances and little grumbles are enough that people have made alternatives, and the price of Final Draft is enough that a lot of people have bought alternatives. We will cover them. I'm not knocking any of them. There's 2 in particular, actually, that I really like. But they are in existence because Final Draft is not as good as perhaps it could be. That said, I don't buy every version. I did get version 11. Version 12, I'm pretty sure must be coming out soon. I don't know, but I expect it is. I doubt very much that I will upgrade to it. Unless there's some amazing new feature I don't know about, I'll hold off till 13 or 14. At some point, I will upgrade to it. But I don't slavishly follow everyone. I'm not eagerly waiting to see what it is, because what I really want are those core features of the writing, and they've been there since presumably version 1. I think I came in around version 6 or 7 when I started doing this sort of stuff. If you have to buy it straight away and crash, well, first check with your studio or your broadcaster, because they might have a site license. I don't know how common this is now, but there have been times when the BBC, for example, has given its writers copies of Final Draft, and that might be the case with you, might not. You could also, there is a trial version, a 30-day trial version, so you can see what all this stuff is like. And I suppose if you write really quickly, maybe you can get your script done and delivered by then and see what happens. Also, if you have ever bought Final Draft, if you have joined in version 6 or whatever I did, and it's been knocking around on a shelf, you've still got the serial number somewhere. Final Draft, the company, is very good at giving upgrade prices. There's also student discounts. There's all sorts of things. And in so many cases, somebody somewhere has a sale on Final Draft. I think if you need it, just buy it. But if you have a moment to look around for a sale price, you can make a substantial saving. And it's definitely worth it for that. That's it for this edition of 58 Keys. I've decided now, yes, we will come back to alternatives to Final Draft, and I'll come back very soon to that so that you can see it soon. And when that's available, I'll put one of these linky card things. But speaking of things that YouTube does, YouTube, the like, the subscribe stuff. If you could do that, that would be a great help to me. Thank you. Also, just thank you very much for watching. I love all this stuff. Writing tools for writers who use Macs and iPhones and iPads. These machines were invented for us, weren't they? Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.